Now on the air from the state of Florida, where our 45th president temporarily resides until his triumphant return to that big house on Pennsylvania Avenue in 2024. Once again, it's time for the Flagler Trump Club's Future of Flagler podcast. Here are the three patriots who will keep Flagler County red while making America great again. Your host, Trump Club President Mike McElroy, along with Trump Club Vice President and Palm Coast City Councilman Ed Danko, and Trump Club Board Director, better known as the Shadow Mayor of Palm Coast, Allen Lowe.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Flagler Trump Club Future of Flagler podcast. I'm Ed Danko, along with my co-host, Allen Lowe. Mike McElroy is out on the West Coast visiting his children for a few weeks, so he'll be back a few weeks from now. We have an incredible guest today. We have a great guest today. We have Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. He'll be joining us momentarily. But before we get there, Allen Lowe, we have some breaking news. Why don't you give us the breaking news?
Well, Palm Coast, I'm not sure if you've heard, but Mayor Melissa Holland resigned. She is now no longer our mayor. And I was running for city council, but I have now switched my race, and I am officially announcing that I am running for the mayor, Palm Coast.
Well, you know, Allen, I supported you last time you ran for mayor. You almost won. We came so close. Supporting you for city council. And, of course, now I am supporting your bid for mayor once again. And I'm going to be out knocking on doors this Saturday for Allen's campaign,
yes,
just like I did during my campaign. And Allen and I are going to be out there waving signs. And we've got 8 weeks to go, folks. And so I support you fully. All right, I'd like to get to our guest, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. Thank you for joining us today, sir.
Glad I could, Mike, or Ed, and Allen. Thank you very much for the chance. I know that you know a good friend of mine who's
sitting right here with us.
Who set all this up.
Yes. David is right here with us, and I mean, he's become a good friend of mine too. And before we begin, Colonel, I just want to thank you for your endorsement during my campaign last year for city council. I mean, there's a reason I won, and I got to tell you, the reason was you. I got such positive feedback from your video endorsement, and I can't thank you enough. So if there's anything I can ever do for you, let me know, sir.
Well, all 28 of us that are connected to me voted for you.
I know. So,
hey, if it was California, they would have counted.
Yes, they would have counted twice. So let's get right into it. I would like you to grade the Biden administration's performance so far, both domestically and on the international scene. What do you think of President Biden?
I think the regime is disastrous, both domestically and internationally. I mean, if you look at some of the catastrophes that we've seen as a consequence of their governance, it's frightening as to where this thing could go in the next 2 years. And I'm hoping, praying, that we're going to end up with a Republican-controlled House and Senate in 2022, because that may be the only thing that can save this country. I mean, think about what's happened. We've seen the catastrophe at the border. It's not a crisis. It's a catastrophe.
It is.
And they can't even say the word, crisis. I mean, we've got tens of thousands of unaccompanied minors wrapped up in a sear blanket is survival, evasion, resistance, and escape.
That's right.
That's what those blankets are. It's right out of a survival pack. And God knows what the Air Force is using for their pilots at this point. When you look at the kinds of things that happened and didn't happen at the so-called mini summit in Anchorage, Alaska, where you've got the foreign secretary, the foreign minister of China just eating the lunch of our representatives, Sullivan and Blinken. And in the aftermath of that, nobody even mentions the Uyghur atrocities, the genocide that's happening, none of the kinds of things that we should have raised with them, like the theft of intellectual property, their violations of the World Trade Organization, the kinds of things that they're doing to build bastions of military might all over the South China Sea, and interfering in the domestic or the internationally recognized borders and economic zones of the Philippines, Vietnam, South Korea, and Japan. I mean, the aggression is phenomenal. They've crushed democracy if you look at what the Communist Chinese did in Hong Kong, they've crushed it.
Yep.
The very opportunity for it. And all of those things were met with no opposition by this regime. And the end result is deterrence has failed. And the proof of that is what we now see happening with the Israelis. I mean, Israel is getting pounded by the estimates are that as many as 10,000 Iranian rockets were delivered to Hamas over the last 5 years. If that's true, they've still got 5,000 to go because they haven't used half of them yet. And the idea of Israeli civilians being targeted by anybody, to include a terrorist regime that is globally recognized as such, and then having the president of the United States call Bibi Netanyahu and tell him to stop is just outrageous. If by the way, if Biden really wants the rockets to stop and the Israeli responses to those rockets will stop at the same time, all he has to do is pick up the phone, call the Ayatollahs, his new pals, tell them that until the rockets stop, the United States is withdrawing from anything to do with the Vienna talks on JCPOA, the so-called Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. In other words, the Iranian nuclear deal.
Yep.
We're pulling out of it. Number two, all the sanctions that were in place before are now back in place, because the only way the regime in Tehran is going to survive is if they can get outside money. And they were relieved when Biden said he was going to go back and reopen the talks with him and lightened up some of the sanctions. Here we are in a country that, I don't know how you guys in Florida weathered the storm, but we had a pretty tough time up here in Virginia because we were out of fuel, basically, except for certain kinds. For example, we live west of the Blue Ridge Mountains. West of the Blue Ridge, retailers are allowed to sell non-ethanol gas. In other words, we can actually buy gasoline that doesn't have our food in it. That's what it is. And so, and that's why we live 70 miles west of Washington. The front door is the Appalachian, the back door is the Appalachian Trail. The front door is the Shenandoah River. And I look at what we just went through as a kind of prep fire, or maybe a picnic, compared to what it's going to be like if we end up with the Straits of Hormuz closed, as they were once or twice before. If they're closed and the oil tankers can't get through, God help us, because we just saw an example of what the consequences of no longer being energy independent. We were, and then we shut down the XL pipeline. We made it hard for fracking to take place. And now we've got a situation where if they do that, we're screwed.
I agree. Alan?
Yes, sir. It's a great honor, Colonel, to be able to speak to you today. I was just telling David that a year and a half ago or less, I would have never imagined being able to do this today. So I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate being able to speak with you. But I do have a question.
Fire away.
All right, thank you. What happens in Afghanistan after Biden's withdrawal? Will this increase the threat of terrorism in the world? And what happens to those 17,000 Afghan interpreters we leave behind?
So there are 17,000. If you count up their family members, it's another 60,000, 70,000. And they're already being, murdered. I mean, they've lost over 500 of them so far, and their family members are targeted. I just did one of my podcasts is going to air here in a couple of days with one of those guys who did make it out. And, all it takes is this president is famous for using his executive orders, right? I mean, more than any other president in history.
And he said he wouldn't.
Yeah, well, of course, but that truth to progressives does not matter. We know that.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. I mean, it's truth to progressives is fictional, right? So we don't have to worry about them telling the truth. What ought to happen is he ought to take out his executive signing pen and sign an executive order that directs the Department of State and the Department of Defense to cooperate in removing all barriers to the special immigration visas, which were created for these very purposes. Not to bring 70,000 people from sub-Saharan Africa here, but in fact, to get special action rapidly. It's supposed to happen in a matter of weeks. It doesn't. There's some people who've waited years. There's no reason for that. And even Jimmy Carter, I mean, don't let the rest of your audience know this, but Jimmy Carter brought in 150,000 refugees from a place called Cuba. And then he brought in another 50,000 from a place called Haiti. He found refuge for them. He fed them, clothed them, and eventually most of them became American citizens. Now, all this president has to do is say, we're going to pick you guys up with military aircraft, bring your families to Bagram Air Base while it's still open, because what's coming is a disaster the likes of which we've only seen once before. And we saw it in May of 1975.
Yes, we
in
did.
A place called Saigon.
Yep.
It was heartbreaking. For those of us who'd fought there and lost friends there, been shot at and hit there, it was a horrible, horrible moment. And we're likely to see that kind of thing again. There's no doubt that the 17,000 Terps, as we called them, and that's the interpreter translators, who went to the field with us, got shot at and hit and sometimes killed right along with the Marines and the soldiers and the SEALs and even war correspondents. I had a Terp when I was with Fox News, okay?
Yep.
I look at what they've been through and what they've done for us and the bravery of their service and said it is unconscionable that these jerks at the White House can't figure out how to get them out before the 9/11 anniversary of this disaster.
It's unbelievable. I was in Key West during that boat lift from Cuba. I was serving in the United States Navy. I was there for a month. We brought a lot of people into this country. Every day we were out there rescuing people, and it's a shame the Biden administration has dropped the ball on this.
Well, I'm very serious. This is likely to cause the kinds of wholesale slaughter we've not seen since those days of Vietnam.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this is just absolutely, it is unforgivable that they would do this. And this country is going to be damaged for decades after.
Yep, it's awful. President Trump has announced that he's going to start rallies up next month. We've heard a lot of hints from President Trump. Do you think he's going to be running in 2024? And will you support him?
Well, I have no idea. I have no idea if he's going to run. If he does, I'll support him. I was one of the earliest supporters. If he'd told me 10 years ago that he was going to run for president of the United States, I'd say, why? Why would you want to give up all that you've accomplished? And I'm not, I don't have the gift of prophecy, but I said to him, if you don't get reelected, they will come after you and destroy you. They will do everything in their power. And we see it happening now. Look, every one of the policies that he put in place, they've tried chopping down, both domestically and internationally, and they worked. I mean, all the records that were set, everything from the best employment for minorities, the lowest unemployment, and the best roaring economy we've ever seen, okay? All that was happening. And we were deterring our adversaries from doing bad things to us. We had energy independence, and we just saw the consequence of not having that and a mini version of it with the Columbia pipeline fiasco that we've had with these guys. Now that they've stopped most of the fracking on public lands, now that they've shut down the...
We've lost audio with Colonel North. Colonel North, we have lost audio.
Pipeline.
Oh,
now
there you are. You're back.
Those things are going to have adverse economic... Did I lose it? Huh? My internet connection is unstable.
No, we're good. You're back.
Good.
You're back. You're back.
Okay.
So pick up where you left off 15 seconds ago.
So the bottom line of it is, domestically and internationally, they're trying everything. Yesterday, the state of New York and the Manhattan District Attorney filed criminal charges against, quote, the Trump Organization. Okay, what's that mean? It means that they're going after him personally. Here's the only president in the history of our nation who's been impeached twice and exonerated twice by the U.S. Senate. Here's the only president that we've ever had that was voted out of office by people who continue to press him and to continue to chase him even after he's left office. Don't underestimate the power of this crowd that runs places like Manhattan District Attorney, the New York District Attorney for the state, and the people at the so-called Department of Justice today to go after this president to try to ruin him.
Yeah. It's a sad day, but I do have another question for you, sir. If Trump were to run, who would you like to see as President Trump's running mate?
Oh gosh, I can confess not to have even thought of it. I know one person it's not going to be. You know, there was a point in time when I was being suggested that I become a cabinet secretary, and I brought the idea home to my wife, of now 53 years, and her comment was, "You have to be nuts. First of all, it's a 70-mile drive into Washington, and I am not moving. Number two, okay." You had better find some really good security guards to protect you from me. Okay?
Well, we have David here. He's volunteering.
He was one of them. He knows. I wasn't going to give away his secrets, but Dave was one of the federal agents who protected my family. and of course then retired, and we've been together ever since. I mean, at one point we had 37 federal agents living with us.
Wow.
And they drink a lot of coffee.
Yes, I bet they do. David spoke at our Trump Club a few weeks ago, and he told the story of how you guys really got close to each other, how he saved you from what's her name, Miss Rice.
Yes. Well, not only that, but he probably didn't tell you how I saved him.
Oh no, he didn't tell us
part
that.
was
Please
missing.
do.
Yeah,
please
do.
Ask him to tell you about what it's like to ride in a car with an attorney general, one of the richest, most valuable Republicans in the history of America, and Betsy and me.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
All right.
I'll
Well,
leave it at
we'll
that.
have to have David fill us in after the show is over.
Make sure the mics are off.
By the way, how's your wife doing?
Well, look, I'm a great, I don't know if I'm great or not, but I'm certainly a believer in the power of the Lord to heal anything. She has what is described by the Mayo Clinic as an incurable, untreatable neuromuscular malady that's very rare. For a long time, there were people thought it was MS or ALS or Parkinson's. And I finally just said, I'm a Marine. I like making decisions. We're going to Mayo Clinic. And so the great doctors at Mayo Clinic diagnosed this. It's called corticobasal syndrome or degeneration, but hard to pronounce, hard to grasp. But we're praying. We've got some hope that there's going to be a program or a protocol or a study being done at NIH that she can get into, and maybe there will be a cure. So I don't give up.
We will keep her in our prayers, and I know
Yes, sir.
all of us here in Flagler County, all of us at the Trump Club will be praying for her, and we certainly believe in the power of prayer. So please give her our best. And we're going to take a little break here, Colonel North. We've got a couple of our sponsors. We have to roll their commercial. So if you hang with us here for 1 minute, we will be back after a word from our sponsors.
Is it enough for Twisted Minds escape rooms? Then check us out at twistedminds.com and book an adventure today. You can choose between Camp Calico or the mysteries of Vanished. How about travel back in time to 1840s California and visit Digger's General Store? Or get ready, coming late spring, early summer 2021, a little bit of mayhem at Twisted Minds escape rooms in Palm Coast. Check us out at twistedminds.com or give us a call at 888-92-TWIST. We'll be waiting.
Tired of sitting at home restless? Need to exercise? Playing golf is one of the best ways to stay fit, and golf courses are one of the safest places to be. The gorgeous 18-hole Gary Player-designed Cypress Knoll Golf Course is open to the public. Enjoy your game in the heart of Palm Coast, surrounded by 9 glimmering lakes and plenty of wildlife. Your safe and healthy choice is Cypress Knoll Golf, voted the most beautiful course in Flagler County. Call to book your tee time, 437-5807. That's 437-5807.
Who do you see as more of a direct threat to America, the Chinese or the Russians, or maybe both?
Good question.
Well, look, I think the Chinese are the number one adversary we've ever faced. Their economy is bigger than ours, whether they acknowledge it or not. Their ideas of replacing the U.S. currency as the reserve currency with the yuan or with a cryptocurrency that's actually sponsored by their state bank. There's no doubt that their military is bigger than ours. They've got more ships in their Navy than we have, more combatant vessels, and they're building more every day, twice as many as we are. So there's no doubt that it's an economic and a military and a security threat to the United States. At the same time, they are very good at exploiting other adversaries. So for example, I have no idea where that shutdown of the Columbia gas line or pipeline actually began, but I have no doubt that the virus that we've been fighting now for a year began in China, probably, at least according to most of the scientists that seem to have any credibility, probably in a Wuhan virology lab that used to be widely recognized as part of the People's Liberation Army. Okay, so I look at that kind of threat, whether they did it intentionally or not, I probably will never know. Someday it will come out. But the bottom line of it is an enormous threat, but they'll exploit their relationships with others. So for example, there's no doubt that the Ayatollahs and the North Koreans having nuclear weapons at their disposal and the means of delivering them, pose a significant threat to the United States because unlike most superpowers, for example, the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union wanted to survive the experience. And so whether you laugh or joke about mutually assured destruction, it worked. It worked because we were dealing with rational actors on the other side who were aggressive. And that's why we had, quote, a Cold War. And I like to tell people that the Cold War, which went on from 1947 to 1990, was cold only for those who did not fight in it, in places like Korea and Vietnam, and in tiny little insurgencies all over, 22 of them, all over Africa, all over Latin America, all over Asia. All those kinds of things were part of it. The Soviet Union tried to exploit those things, but when the Soviet Union broke up in 1991, all of those KGB-supported terrorist organizations, like the Red Brigades or the Baader-Meinhof faction, disappeared. But the Chinese know that the number one source for terrorism today is Tehran. Guess who's supporting the Tehran government with secret funds and the abilities to become even more violent? That's why I said, if somebody wants to stop the rockets from flying out of Gaza into Israel, all they have to do is pick up the phone and tell the Ayatollahs, not Hamas. Hamas is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Ayatollahs. All they have to do is pick up the phone and tell the Ayatollahs, we're cutting off all the aid. We're turning off the spigot again, like we did right after we signed JCPOA and President Trump backed out of it. All those kinds of things could be done. But when you've got a weak government in DC, they don't even know how to spell the word deterrence. They don't do those things. And so the world becomes more dangerous every day because of the Biden administration. Our adversaries, Communist China number 1, Russia number 2, Iran number 3, North Korea number 4, those adversaries are emboldened by the feckless inability on the part of this administration to do a damn thing right. And I give you case number 1, the 17,000 Terps and translators that we got to know so well when we were over there. I did 60 plus embeds over there. Every one of them, we had an interpreter, translator. In fact, sometimes just Fox, we had our own without even relying on the others. If you look at what's happening in the world today, all those threats, as you put it, are worse today than they were, let's say, a year ago.
Yeah, we're gonna have a problem in Taiwan too, aren't we? Under the Biden administration,
Yeah.
The Chinese sense the weakness.
Yep, they do.
Yeah.
They're very good at reading it.
Yeah.
And you know, again, I don't have the gift of prophecy, but if I were a Taiwanese businessman, I'd be making sure that I've got some investments overseas.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's
100%.
Under Trump, the Chinese I don't think would dare to make a move, but Joe Biden and his administration, it's sad. It's sad what they're doing. When I was serving in the United States Navy, they taught us a couple of things. Our mission was to break things and kill people. That was our primary mission, right? And I know as a Marine, that was certainly your mission too. Our military's capable, but our leaders, I just don't have any confidence in these folks right now of allowing our military to do its job.
Yeah. Look at, there's an effort by the Defense Secretary to turn our military, every branch, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and Space Force, right, into social justice warriors. I mean, think about this. If you, in any business, if you took 1.5 million man days out of your production of whatever it is, your goods and services, Amazon would go under. 1.5 million. That's the minimum numbers of days that have been wasted on this whole business of turning our military into social justice warriors. We're gonna pick out those people who don't match this administration's idea of what an extremist is. They're going to take them out. They're giving guidance to our commanders in the field. You cannot tolerate intolerance. Okay, so what is intolerance? What is an extremist? I actually had this question put to me in another podcast. Is a member of a church group, Officers Christian Fellowship, which is a Protestant organized faith group, or non-denominational at best, or the Knights of Columbus, is that an extremist group because they happen to believe that the Roman Catholic Church happens to be right about a bunch of things? Is that what we're looking at? Because the frightening prospect is once you've started that, you start undoing what we all call an all-volunteer force. Moms and dads are not going to have their kids want to go and serve with Harry, who used to be Mary, who's now the drill instructor. I mean,
You're absolutely right. We don't need Corporal Klinger out there on the battlefield, do we?
Right, exactly.
It's a shame. It's a shame. I was handed a copy of your new book, literally moments before we started this podcast. So I've not had the opportunity to read it, but I will read it. I promise you. Veterans Lament. Is this the America our heroes fought for? Can you tell us a bit about your book, sir?
Sure. Yeah. Well, my dear colleague David Gutch and I, who wrote that book, interviewed 500 people who'd served in the armed forces. Some going all as far back as Vietnam, and as recently as just came back from overseas in this longest war we've ever fought. The folks we interviewed are military guys. They served in every branch of the military, almost every rank. It's not just general and flag officers, though there's a bunch of them. And I look at what they're saying to us then, and we interviewed them before the election. And there's a long, if you look at the table of contents, my book is sitting over on the other side of the room where I'd pick it up. The table of contents.
Well, I've got the book right here. What would you like me to look at?
No, just run down that table of contents, because that's their major concerns. And guess what? We're preparing a sequel to it, because they didn't fight for socialism most of all. That's what they'll tell us. And the idea that we're going to turn this military inside out, upside down, and wreck the finest military that's ever existed just is unnerving to them, and it will be to you when you finish this, because you also served, my friend.
Yes, and I tell you, I think probably the best time in my life was serving in uniform, serving our country. Nothing could have been better. I wish I could go back in age and redo it again. I had a great time. The friendships you make, the bonding, it's amazing, as you know. That's a wonderful expression. It actually is very true. It's like, if I knew then what I know now, I'd have behaved a lot differently.
Well, let me ask you, sir. You have a fantastic history, a fantastic career that you've had, and what's next for Colonel Oliver North?
Well, we've got. I started up a publishing house because there were publishing houses in America that said, if you had served in the Trump administration, we're not going to publish your book. Well, send it to me. So Fidelis Publishing is the company we started. We also started Fidelis Media. Dave, who's sitting there right there, has been through all of that. The really great news is we began Fidelis Publishing in December. Actually started our very first activity in January, and this month we broke even. And that's a great testament to the wonderful people with whom I've got to work, but most of all to the wonderful authors who came to us and said, would you publish our book?
Oh, that's fantastic.
And we're seeing, it's an answer to prayer. The good Lord says, we're going to smile on this effort, because there is much of what we do that would not be done any other place. And the good news is the American people are hungry for the truth. And that's what we publish, the truth.
Well, the book is Veterans Lament, and I'm holding up a copy right here. And I assume you can get this in virtually any bookstore and online at Amazon, or what way would you like people to buy it?
And if they're having trouble, tell them to go to olivernorth.com and click on the books, and they can get the books that way too. Even if Amazon blacklists us, we're still out there.
olivernorth.com, where I assume they can keep up with you and your life and everything too on your website.
Can indeed, brother. No doubt about it.
Well, listen, I want to thank you for joining us, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. It is a privilege and a pleasure to speak with you directly today, and I know Alan feels the same way.
100%. I really, really, really appreciate this, and it's a fantastic honor for me to speak to you.
Oh, you're kind. And I want you to know that we'll pray for your great success, and we'll go up on my podcast and remind people that you're there. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Me.
And
it is Veterans Day. Memorial Day coming up. Yes. So two things. Number one, the Marine Corps slogan of Semper Fidelis is more than a slogan. It's a way of life. Number two, pray for America on Memorial Day especially, but all the rest of the year, as well. Semper Fi, guys.
I absolutely agree. Thank you, sir. All right. Again, Alan, great show.
It's a great show. I think we should remind people about the Trump Club, and that we have a meeting at the Palm Coast VFW off Old Kings Road the third Monday of every month, starting at 6:30, and we would like to see you there with us.
Yes, absolutely. And please go to our website, which is flaglerfortrump.com, and that's the number 4, flaglerfortrump.com. All right, that's it for now. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and we look forward to seeing you.
The Future of Flagler is sponsored by the Flagler Trump Club. Our meetings are every third Monday, starting at 6:30 p.m. at the Palm Coast VFW. Visit our website, flaglerfortrump.com. That's Flagler, the number 4, Trump.com to learn more. Let's make America great again.